Just a second. Let me say good evening, ladies and gentlemen, those who have joined us already for our third installment on the conflicts between Israel and Palestine. Can I ask Reverend Nkosi, because I know you won't grace us all the time. Whilst you are here, let me overuse you and just in a briefly open for us in prayer, sir. Let me use this opportunity.
Thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, we come before your throne of mercy, throne of love, throne of peace, and throne of justice. We come bringing forth your people in Israel, your people in Gaza, your people in the West Bank, and your people of the world. We bring them and we bring those souls to you after commemorating all saints. Bring all the saints, the church in heaven and the church on earth. We ask, Lord God, that you brace us with your presence as we are about to commence with this webinar. Brace all those who are in fear, in turmoil, in time of war. Be with them, give them comfort, give them strength to soldier on at this time of great fear. Be with us as we're going to discuss and deliberate on these issues. May your Holy Spirit sanctify each and every thought and sanctify each and every discussion that will come through. And I ask all this in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, world without end. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Amen. Thank you so much for this. Let me just maybe begin by just introducing our panelists to those who are joining us online on across our 6 countries of the Methodist connection, and those who have already joined us on Zoom. Introduced our guests this evening. We have 2 esteemed gentlemen, the men of the cloth. We have the Reverend Nkosi from the Lutheran Church, and we have the Reverend Molo from the Methodist Church. If I may start with Reverend Molo. Reverend Molo is a man of few words. He just said, I must introduce him. If I was writing a Facebook status, I would have said, after that, I would have said, lol. He's a Methodist minister in secondment to the South African Council of Churches. Molo, I appreciate your presence, sir, this evening. It's a great pleasure to have you. Secondly, it is my honor and great pleasure, really, to have Reverend Nkosi. Reverend Nkosi, I first met him at a party. I know it might not be the best way to introduce a minister, but I met Reverend Nkosi at a party in Palito, a good party. So he gave an inspiring word, but he, as I've said, his legend precedes him. Reverend Nkosi is an ordained minister in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Southern Africa. He serves as a pastor in charge at Durban South Parish. He has been working with the Israeli and Palestine question since 2013. I can say it's exactly 10 years. He volunteered in a World Council of Churches program called Ecumenical Accompaniment Program in Palestine and Israel, where he was placed in Jerusalem, and second time he was placed in Jordan Valley, known to many as Jericho. I can say Jericho. Reverend Nkosi has attended Kairos Palestine Conference in Bethlehem, Palestine in 2014, 2018, and in 2022. He continues to assist the South African National Coordinator of Ecumenical Accompaniment Program in Palestine and Israel. He's a participator at the Kairos Palestine Work Group, a participator in a Global Kairos for Justice. active member of solidarity service activities in KZN. Mostly he is a servant of God through word and sacrament. Gentlemen, let me take this opportune moment to really welcome you this evening. Whilst I welcome you, gentlemen, I want to just mention a special word of apology for our Bishop, Reverend Mandindi. He is held up in a family covenant in hospital. A family member is in hospital, but he'll be joining us later. So I'm really welcoming you on his behalf. He's actually the host of these sessions. If Reverend Moro would have known, he joined us last time. So Reverend Mandindi, our bishop of our district, is actually the host. So he will be joining us later. He'll probably be able to convey exactly his gratitude for your presence. Without wasting more time, let me also extend the word of welcome to all those who have joined us on Facebook and those who have joined us here on Zoom, and say, guys, you are welcome. We are excited to have you, and we look forward to your participation, whether through questions or through comments and contribution. We are excited to have you. As we resume this session, I would want to firstly remind us of the two sessions we've already had before. The first sessions we had our former president bishop of the Methodist Church, Reverend Siwa, Professor Uneba, and our third guest, Reverend Paul Veren, as our former bishop of the Central District. Some of the things that we looked at on our first session was that the genesis of this conflict of Palestine and Israel, and also looked at how did we eventually got where we are with this conflict. And we had our second session, which was also all females. We had a lady from Gaza in Palestine. We also had Dr. Retane Vika. We also had my sister Pamela Ubane. We also looked at the narrative of the chosen people, the Holy Land, plus the pain of the Palestine people. Those are some of the highlights or the major themes of the previous discussion. We're on session number 3 today, and we are here. We are on day 32 of this ongoing and senseless brutality and killing going on in Palestine. To date, on the 6th of October, or of November rather, 10,581 people have been killed. 4,412 are children. 2,761 are women. We have 28,137 injuries. 1.5 million people have been displaced. 51,000 completely destroyed homes and counting. There's a lot of statistics I could actually go over in terms of just mentioning the atrocities that have taken place in the last 32 days of this conflict. So I want to kick off. This is a mediated conversation. It's not a debate. It's to unpack these atrocities going on and mobilizing ourselves in a remote country, South Africa, and making everyone to be alert of the ongoings in the Middle East. So I want to resume our first segment with you, Reverend Nkosi. Reverend Nkosi, as I've alluded in his introduction, mentioned he has lived in the Middle East, he has lived in Palestine, has worked there as an activist, as a minister of the word. Mfundisi, if I may unpack this subject, I just want to pose this question to you. Why is the term apartheid appropriate in describing Israel's current rule over Palestine? Let me repeat. Why is the term apartheid inappropriate in describing Israel's rule over Palestine?
Thank you so much. I think the term on its own, its literal form, it means the state of separatedness, a state of separatedness. And one of the major things one experienced in the West Bank and in Israel is a visible state of separatedness from the wall, separation wall that is 950 kilometers long, that eats on the strategic and fertile lands of Palestinians, that on this very wall, you'll find checkpoints that are connecting towns. Another thing of the state of separatedness is the East and West Jerusalem. When you're in Jerusalem, the east side, you'll find that that's where mostly Palestinian Arabs are. And those Palestinian Arabs are supposed to be getting your typical services from the municipality, from getting of trash, from to water, to light, to everything. It is so smelly in such a way that when you move from East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem, even the air changes. The air changes to West Jerusalem, where most Israelis are placed and occupy. Another thing that makes this term fitting is the laws that applies only to Palestinian Arabs. They still carry dome passes like our parents did. They still carry dome passes. For those who live in East Jerusalem, they carry green IDs to identify them as Palestinians, and they should at all times be carrying these passes. We still have what we call flying checkpoints, where you are stopped on the road impromptu when you're going to do and to mind your business. The same way it happened with our parents during the apartheid days, and they will ask for your dome pass to make sure that you are in Jerusalem, you have gone through the checkpoint, and your dome pass has been scanned, and you are here officially. Another reason why this term works, it is the checkpoints that connect towns. Now, Jerusalem is surrounded by this wall. When you come from the Jericho side, or you come from Bethlehem side, or Kalandia side into Jerusalem, you go through what we call military checkpoints. I call it, as a former cow herder from Emakhaya, the rural areas of Ewashbange, Toleni, where I have taken cattle into the cattle chutes. I understand very well the iron bars that were meant for inkomo in these checkpoints that are connecting Jerusalem are meant for human beings, and those human beings, they're only meant for Palestinian Arabs. And lastly, when you enter through Jerusalem, or when you enter through West Bank and Palestinian territories, you will find a notice that says these territories are not allowed for Jewish people. These territories are only for Arab people only. You'd remember in the olden days, you'll find the black and white places where only black people should be found here, or white people, you can't find a black person in places designated for white people. You still find that in the West Bank, and you still find that in Palestinian territories. Lastly, Palestine and its territories, it is partitioned or divided into three. There's area A, B, and C. Just like the Bantustans in the olden days, in the apartheid era in South Africa, where area A, it is only run by the Palestinian Authority alone. And area B, it is both shared by Palestinian Authority and Israeli Authority. And area C, which is controlled by Israeli authority. All that, it is separatedness, a state where people are being separated by race. It is racially separated. And lastly, the laws that governs the state of Israel are laws that knows no any other race but the Jewish race. So if you are not Jewish, you suffer under ethnic cleansing. And I will always call it, as an African person, this is how I have defined it. It is like a three-legged pot. A name of that three-legged pot, it is called ethnic cleansing. It is standing on three legs. The first leg, apartheid with its laws, what I've just explained to you. The second leg, it is standing on secular colonialism, where much land or that belongs to Palestinians, it is taken by settlers and many settlements are being built. And lastly, annexation. All these informs why the term apartheid is relevant to further explain what is happening. And I'm teaching recently to stop calling it a conflict. If you call it a conflict, you desensitize it. When in 1948, apartheid was passed as a state law, it was not called a conflict, it was called apartheid. When the settlers from England came and Jan van Riebeeck came to South Africa to grab our land and to rape our women and to take our resources, it was called colonialism. When the war broke in Russia and Ukraine, we gave it a name. It was not a conflict, it was a war. And we must start now to call it by name. This is an illegal occupation. This is an apartheid Israel. This is annexation state. This is a genocide state. Once we begin to call this regime and everything that happens in that land by name, we bring consciousness and we make everyone aware that this must come to an end. Thank you.
That was a mouthful, Mpunis. I think it was a great way to really open. Was really a great way to open. Whilst we're there, I just wanna alert everyone who has joined and who continues to join with the Facebook and WhatsApp that you write your questions down, you note your comments as we journey on. I know not everyone needs to ask questions, but you might have your own opinion that you want to put in there as part of your contribution to this discussion. I mean, you have spent some time in the region, you have spent some time with the locals, maybe, saw a young one there in Palestine, the minister. But to bring it home, Fundisi, we just want to get a feel of what life is really like. I know you would have touched in a previous presentation here or so. What is life like for a Palestinian living in the Gaza Strip? We know that Palestine is not only Gaza, but from some of us or most of us who've never been to Palestine, we only know of Gaza. It's the most spoken about place, and we might relegate the whole Palestine to Gaza. You might want to paint a picture for us as what life looks like for a person living in Gaza. I mean, every day we get a new statistics of people being bombed. people being deprived of their human rights, people being treated like animals, people being treated like they don't exist. What is life like for someone living in Gaza today?
Well, hey, my brother, life in Gaza and the West Bank, it's indescribable. Imagine an open, well, Archbishop Tutu and Reverend Chikane and many of our stalwarts who have been to Gaza, they limited it and their understanding to being an open air prison. Imagine being in a densely populated area, 2 million, in an area well smaller than Umlazi, where I'm at. And there are 2 million people in that area, no space, no water, no clean water, not allowed to go through any borders, whether by the waters, through the ocean, or by flight, or by anything. Imagine being surrounded by the military of the state of Israel, Israeli Defense Force. Imagine you can't get to the hospital. The right hospital that can even assist you are outside Gaza, and you need a permission to go get health care. Imagine being in a place where you cannot build your own home. You cannot even extend your house because the laws of the land requires you to go find permission from the state of Israel. Imagine that you can't take your children to a park. Imagine that you can't take your children to a mall. Imagine that your children have limited schools, and the schools that are there are now recently being bombed. Imagine that you can't go to church with your family. Imagine that you can't go to prayer. Your mother cannot go to prayer. Imagine you can't have livestock. Imagine you can't have all that in that space, yet you are exposed to internet. You see how people your age live outside yourself. You see how life could be outside yourself, outside Gaza. And that's the typical life of Gazans. And if bombs are not being thrown, imagine 5-year-olds, young boys being taken and thrown into police van and being handcuffed, blindfolded, and they drive so fast to instill fear so that they don't fight and reject occupation. Imagine young women and young men who are supposed to be in a stage of getting jobs. They cannot get jobs because they are stuck here. This is an open air prison. Imagine that. Imagine you can't visit your relatives outside Gaza because now they have relatives in the West Bank and in other parts of Israel as well. Imagine that you left your heritage home where your grandfather, your parents grew up, and you were squashed into Gaza, and you can't access that home, you can't access the relatives. Imagine right now as we speak, there's no internet, there's no connectivity in terms of cellular, there's no water, there's no electricity. Imagine all that kind of a lifestyle. That I'm just trying to paint for you. Imagine living on a rubble. Imagine the smell of death because people are under the rubble. Imagine that. Imagine children not playing. An 8-year-old in Gaza has experienced 5 wars already. An 8-year-old, I'm repeating, in Gaza has experienced 5 wars. Imagine what kind of life. Imagine wherever you go, you see guns. Imagine that kind of a life. So, in a nutshell, that's the type of a life that they are living in Gaza. Imagine Hunger Games. If you've seen Hunger Games, that's what Gaza looks like. You know, so yeah, that's the lifestyle they're living, in fact.
Thank you, Mfundis. You know, I'm just reminded of a quote by Stride Toward Freedom. They say, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." And we live in such a time where people have to be convinced that something is evil before they protest against it. They have to ask questions why. When they see little children being slaughtered, they see unarmed civilians, women, disabled, the elderly being slaughtered, civilians living in their homes, not Hamas being killed, and they want to ask questions. So when it's as Christians, you will know. This is the last shot on your site in our first segment. As Christians, we always pride on this world called Jerusalem. And we know that in Jerusalem, you won't find only Jews or Israelites, as it were, but also people who are of Muslim faith, Palestinians, do live in Jerusalem. If you can paint a picture for us of what is the situation like for people who are Palestinians or people who are of non-Jewish faith, what their life is like living in Palestine, and paint us a picture of the racial groupings. Are there any black people who live there? What is their situation looking like who live in Jerusalem, especially in our perspective as Christians in South Africa who like esteem Jerusalem as a holy land, as a place we pray to go to when we depart from this earth.
Thank you. It's interesting that when we depart this earth, we want to go to Jerusalem. I'd say rather go to heaven.
Streets of
Rather go to
gold.
heaven.
We want
It's
streets
safer
of
in
gold.
heaven than it is in Jerusalem. No, one wants to share with you the demographics. Number one, there are two people in the land. There are Jews and Arabs. Now, with the Jews, when it comes to religion, there are three religions. Two people, but three religions. The religion with the most members is Islam. And Islam is found with Arab people, and followed by Judaism, and Judaism with only Jews, explicitly only Jews. You won't find Christian Jews, only Jews. And then within the Arabs, you find Christianity. So today, Christianity is with Arab nationalities. We are having the Methodist, I think the Methodist Church is the least in the Holy Land. We only had an office there that was launched. We have the Catholics, we have the Anglicans, the Lutheran. The Orthodox is the dominating Christian religion in the Middle East. The Orthodox Church, you've got the different types of Orthodox churches. But the relations are like this. Israeli occupation serves no one but Judaism when it comes to religion. Israeli occupation sees no Christianity. In fact, it can do without Christianity. It wants to do away without Islam. So there are plans that we are hearing when we are reading sources, when we are speaking of ethnic cleansing, that Judaism wants to wipe away Christianity and wants to wipe away Islam so that they can build the third temple of the Messiah. And that Messiah is not our Lord Jesus Christ, because I know it's easier for Christians to think,
Hey.
oh, the Jews, they will sympathize with as Christians. You know, the Jews still don't like Christians. We are blasphemers according to the Jews, according to the Jewish people on the land. So that's the demographic. We do have black people. Black people through Ethiopia. They've come through Ethiopia. Some are Jewish. They are serving in the military of Israeli Defense Force. And we do have black people who are Palestinian, because that region was connected with Africa since forever, before the Suez Canal. So when we read how Abraham moved from what we call Iran to Egypt, you could see there was an easier access between Middle East and Africa. We do have black people, and I even have a Palestinian name myself that I was given in the land. I'm Abu Assad, father of a lion. So there are black people. There are black people in the land for both who subscribe as both Palestinian and who subscribe as Jew. Mind you, before 1948, I need to share this with you. Before 1948, an iconic year that got us where we are, the term Palestinian was like South African, it's a nationality. So pre-1948, the term Palestinian, it meant you could have been a Jewish person or you could have been an Arab person. People from that land subscribed on the nationality of being Palestinian. It only changed later on after 1948, going to 1967 after the Intifada, where the term now changed complexion. They wanted to do away with the term Palestine. So before 1948, if you ask who is Palestinian, you will find Jewish people. And today, we still have those Orthodox Jews who call themselves Palestinians. Those progressive Jews, you'll see them wearing black with some, I don't know what you call some braids, and you'll see them carrying Palestinian flags because they still believe they are Palestinian. So that's the demographic with regards to religion. It's two people, Jewish people and Arabs, three religions. There is Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And I want to send a message to Christians around the world. Let us start to listen to the church leaders in the Middle East. Let's listen to the church leaders in Jerusalem. We are so pompous and boastful that we want to dictate terms whilst we are not living under the conditions as Christians outside Palestine. Let us follow, let us be led by the church in Jerusalem. In fact, theologically and in the New Testament, the church in Jerusalem was an iconic church. That's when all the apostles had to go to Jerusalem to report back on their mission stations. And today, I see that we need to go back to that and follow the lead of the church leaders. It is so appalling and it is so painful to see church leaders of our denominations suffering in Palestine, yet we are supporting the state of Israel. Church leaders of our churches, our bishops, suffering in Jerusalem, and yet we continue with this narrative of Christian Zionism and supporting the state of Israel. So let us follow the lead of the church leaders in Jerusalem, and they will not lead us astray. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mfundis. Thank you so much. That was quite a mouthful. Again, welcome to those who have joined us, who continue to join us across Facebook pages and here on Zoom. I want to go to Reverend Molo. There's this quote, I don't know where it comes from, but it says, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And I think we find ourselves in such a time of challenge and controversy. Reverend Molo, I want I know you've been to Palestine and Israel at least more than 3 times, if not 3 times. I want us to look at the geopolitical situation in the region and the impact of global politics in the region. You know, I want to open or introduce you in this way as opening your this discussion from your point of view, the possible areas of struggle to enhance the Palestinian cause. Just for those who might not have heard, let me repeat myself. Maybe what are the possible areas of struggle to enhance the Palestinian cause? Reverend Molo.
Thank you, Colin. Greetings. Thank you. Do you hear me now? Am I audible?
You are audible. I can now we can hear you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and to participate in this important conversation. Two or three things before I answer your question. The first one is, I think that the quote you are referencing is probably given by most to Martin Luther King Jr. That's that quote. Secondly, I just wanted to check he referenced what is called Arab Palestinian. Was he referencing the Arab Israelis? In other words, those Israelis who are Arabs but who are citizens of Israel, although they are second-class, if not third-class citizens of the state of Israel.
Yes, although I did not get part of your question, but I think you are asking when I was referencing the Palestinian, because now I'm the Palestinian pre-1948, the Jews, Palestinian Jews, Orthodox Jews, they refer to themselves.
No, that's not what I was referencing. In your earlier introduction, I think I know what you mean, but I just wanted to be clear for everybody. You reference the Palestinians in Gaza, you reference the Palestinians in the West Bank, and the Palestinian in East Jerusalem. And in your referencing, you said Arab Palestinians. And I just wanted to check whether, to be precise, so that people can connect what you are saying, whether at that point you're referencing Arab Israelis, which is those Israeli citizens who are Arabs, who are treated as third-class citizens in the state of Israel itself.
Yeah, no, I was. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. I think those are the same people, the second-class Arabs, Israelis, who are the same people with the same ones in East Jerusalem who carry dome passes, and they are the same people even with those in the West Bank as well as in the Gaza. Yes, I was referencing them.
Yes, I highlight that because I just want people to realize that Israel, the Israel state, always defends itself as being multicultural by arguing that it includes within its states people who are not Jews, and they reference the Arab Israelis, whom, and I agree with you, that they are treated as third-class citizens in the state of Israel. They don't have the same rights, they don't have the same benefits. For that matter, a person who's got Jewish parents who lives in South Africa has got more rights than an Arab Israeli who is supposedly a citizen of the state of Israel. So I just wanted to make sure that coming back then to the point that Kolo, you raised this thing at two different points so that I journey with you. And I want to start with a personal note. The personal note is, I considered myself long time ago a politically conscious young person. And I knew a part of the internationalism that has brought me up in the times of struggle. So I had a sense of what Arafat stands for. But my exposure to the Israeli Palestinian occupation and loss of land and rights and dignity is a strange one, in the sense that my first trip to Israel, which I want to indicate to most of us who are part of this, my first trip was what is called the Holy Land trip, which was meant to teach me of the places where Jesus walked, where Jesus ate, where Jesus died. I've seen, I don't want to go into that space. I've seen 3 places where Jesus has supposedly died in. And I've seen 3 places where the grave of resurrection have come in. In one trip where I was supposedly being given the spiritual journey to do that. And I start there because I did not realize that that trip is heavily subsidized by the Israeli state. Actually, they invest millions and millions of rands in order to get us into Israel so that they are able to elicit sympathy from us. And 2 levels. The first level is connecting with our religiosity, and they connect us with our religiosity that this is the land of Jesus and whatever else, and therefore wherever you go there. It's a strange thing because they don't spend time too much on the prophetic line, which is powerful. But anyway, let's leave that aside for a minute. The second part, which is true, which is very powerful. If you've gone onto that trip, you would definitely go into the Holocaust Museum. You would definitely go into the Holocaust Museum. And it is an evocative and powerful, emotive engagement with who we are and who you are as a human being. When you see the horrors that the Jewish people endured during the Nazi and the Second World period, it really is evocative. It hits you in the gut. There's a room there that I will never forget. It's a room where you walk through that room and that you don't have lights. You see pictures of children who have been killed through the Holocaust. Their names are being called out. It is dark and you walk through that thing. By the time you come out at the end of it, you really feel the horror of that moment. And one of the reasons why I mentioned this is, one of the things I noticed when we went through that journey is how many young soldiers of Israel are put through that. In that day, I probably saw more than 400 or 500 soldiers in a space where I spent probably 2 to 3 hours just looking at that. And I'm raising this to say there are these connects that are brought to us of those who are able then to turn into that. The next part then of my own exposure is when I went then later on the same trip. I want to bore you because I'm politically alert. I wanted to go to Ramallah and I wanted to engage the people. I was told that the trip is not supposed to do that. The trip is not subsidized to do that up until I protested enough for me to be given a taxi just to be driven on my own to Ramallah. For part of this work now, I saw Mrs. Jordan Roxanne, who I saw her earlier on. We're part of this trip that went then to engage the churches, engage the people of Palestine. And I'm not going to go into that. The next phase, which was last year, it is when we went to Palestine. It was me, Reverend Chikane, and Reverend Mosin. And we went there and we deliberately decided to spend time. We spent a week there engaging NGOs engaging Muslim community groups, engaging Christian groups, engaging church leaders, engaging the PLO, engaging everybody that we could engage. We tried to engage the Israeli government side. We didn't succeed. We also engaged some progressive Jews that spent time. 2 of them were ambassadors here in South Africa in the early 90s, and they were touched by our own transformative journey. So all those people gave us a varied experience of the playing field as it stands at that moment. And we have a report. We can share that report because it's a public report. We can share that report with you and share with everybody for people to know what we said about that report. So that's the first point. So coming back to the thing that you want me to go to in a very short space of time. The first thing I want to say, we need to realize this is not a religious conflict, nor war. The Israeli state wishes for us to categorize it as such. This is not a war between Judaism and Islam. This is not a war between those who believe a God who's called this name or God who's called that name. In its origin, the Zionist movement is an origin of what you might call atheists, those who don't believe in God. There are men who even believe that Netanyahu is not a practicing Jew. Netanyahu used Judaism for political gain. So this is not a political war. Nkosi has referenced this. Jews and Christians lived together in that space before all of this. I don't have time to bore you. This is the reality. The 1917 to 1948 journey is a journey of Europe who does not know what to do with the Jewish component of their societies. In Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, in Britain, they're all struggling because of how they treated the Jews prior to the First World War, during the First World War, Second World War, and how they're struggling to deal with this whole thing about how do you deal with these people. Those who studied the history, they know that there was even an attempt for them to be taken to Uganda so that they stay in Uganda. At some moment, they even considered South Africa. Just imagine that for a second. They considered that they can bring, and then some part of South Africa will be taken. Am I still audible? So the truth is, thank you. So the truth we're dealing with here is that we are dealing with a political, and many even Christians in Palestine tell you, this has got nothing to do with belief. It's got everything to do with politics. And the Zionist movement has done 3 powerful things for them, for their cause. One, they have never allowed Europe to forget what Europe did to the Jewish community. They have made sure that Europe remembers all the time. Secondly, they have flooded the West, especially America, with control. And they control America in ways that even Obama can't control. Netanyahu told Obama, while Obama was president, that I've got more influence in your Congress than you have, you who is Obama. And therefore, because we must do, in my view, the following things. And I'm going to list them as part of that journey. You can elucidate them as we talk in our conversation with everybody. The first one is to say, we must elevate Palestinian faces and Palestinian voices in our midst. I was happy that last week you were able to get a Palestinian voice to be present in the conversation. We need to learn the humility that Rev Nkosi is asking of all of us. To say, this fight should be led in its articulation, in its narration, in its visibility by Palestinians. What does that mean? That means the following, in my view, that those of us who can connect with Palestinian voices should allow you in this platform to connect with them and allow them to speak for themselves. It means that those of us who've got access to conferences, whether it's a conference that takes decision, whether it's a conference that speaks to policy matters, we should go out of our way, raise money, invite Palestinians, and allow them, not only for that conference, allow them to spend time in our context, to share with us, so that our people can engage with them, hearing their stories in whatever way that they can share them. That allows them to speak for themselves, that allows them to be seen for the human beings that they are, that allows them to tell their story in the best possible way that they can tell their story. That is important because it is their struggle. We can only amplify what they do. So that's the first thing that I want to put. Secondly, we need, as part of that strategy, we need to contest the dominant narrative about what is happening in Palestine. This, what you're doing, is part of that. But we need to tell those who decide, who are editors in the SABC, ENCA newsroom, everywhere else they go. We need to tell them, do not parrot. Don't take what CNN tells you and give it to us as news. That is not news.
Yes,
that
sir.
is mimicking. You are mimicking what the West is giving us, and you want to give that to us as news. That is not news. So we need to then contest them and put pressure on them as society and say, when you put Biden, when you put Blinken, when you put Netanyahu, when you put Sunak, when you put Starmer as the dominant faces in our news, and then you include one or two Palestinians, and then you think you've done your job, you have not done your job. So we need then to say to ourselves, let's how put pressure there. We live in a place when you, before you, in your social media networks, before you retweet, before you resend, look at what you are saying, because we've got the power now to share this news. Seek out proper Palestinian voices. Seek them out. Ask people on this matter, if I want a Palestinian, what video can I get that speaks to Palestinians? And let those Palestinians then be the ones who speak so that we amplify their voices. The third one I want to say is that we need to make sure that if we're going to be strategic around this matter, we need to demystify for ourselves this whole idea of anti-Semitism. The biggest power for that in the media that Israel has is this idea of labeling everybody anti-Semitic. We need then to make sure that we fight very hard to say the critique of Israel as a state and the excesses of that state is not an indication of being anti-Semitic. And therefore we need to fight very hard with that, because what they do is they shut you out by telling you we're anti-Semitic. They have called Tutu an anti-Semitic. Just think for that minute. So you need to fight for that so that we've got the space to critique and then make sure that we do that. The fourth thing that I want to highlight for us in the strategic thing, it is to realize that South Africa is lucky in some ways, because the government, in the main, we're in the same song sheet. We sing the same song. It is the matter whether Iki Inyugile or whether Iki Ipanzi, and everybody has celebrated today that the reality is that they are recalling the ambassador and whoever else is part of that as a sign of protest, and therefore as a sign of saying to deal with that. So what that means, therefore, is that we need then to say to ourselves, how do we make sure that we understand that the biggest fight for this to change, where is the place where the needle can be moved? The biggest fight, it is in the capitals of the West. Those who are doing Arab work in the Arab nations, they're doing wonderful work. Now, let me say this. Those who are in the Arab states, in the big cities of Doha, in the big cities of Jordan, in the big cities of Iraq, they are important because what they are doing there, it is to put pressure on their political elite who have been pressured by America to accept Israel as some partner outside of resolving of the Palestinian question. So what you had was what was called the Abrahamic agreements, which were made by UAE and ever to recognize Israel. What you also now were going to have Saudi Arabia was moving to normalize relations. So the people there are putting pressure. What I'm asking for is for us who are part of this global community in the South to connect on the 3 levels. The first level, it is to put pressure on African countries who are being manipulated by Israel to make sure that Israel does not use the money that America gives it to palm the hands of our political elite in the continent in order to whitewash them. The second one, and I'm talking here to Christians, the second one is for us as Christians in this platform, and let me start with Methodists. The Methodists who are in this platform exist within the Methodist community called World Methodist Council. Now, it is important for us, one, to put the matter squarely on the table of the World Methodist Council, those of us who are Methodists. I do not know whether the General Secretary is still Reverend Ivan Abrams or former presiding bishop. He needs to be lobbied to put the matter squarely into the center of the conversation there.
Yeah. Just one second. Just one second, yes. Reverend Molo. I've been alerted that Reverend Nkosi has an emergency that he needs to attend to. So I want Reverend Nkosi to release him at this juncture. Reverend Nkosi, we are so grateful to have had you, Mfundisi. We hope to.
Maybe you want to say something before he goes. Maybe you want to say something before he goes.
Yeah, if you want to have a last word before you leave, Mfundisi.
Thank you so much. I think Mfundisi has covered clearly way forward. Our churches are part of the establishment, and this generation should end it now. We should lobby our churches to boycott. Our churches are afraid of the term boycott, divestment, and sanction. You mentioned that in any of the strategic places of our churches, they shut you off. What happened in the World Council of Churches General Assembly when they did not want to move the issue of Palestinians must never happen, not with South Africa. So all our South African bishops, we must go lobby them. They must go with a clear mandate. We can't be a formally occupied country supporting countries where our churches are coming from. We are not parrots and puppets of where our churches are coming from. We are South Africans, and
ouch. I think many of us are, since the box have come back from France, load shedding is back in full force. And I think most of people who are part of this show are on the 6 to 8 slot. So they are struggling. I think mine is starting at 8. So let me allow to release Reverend Nkosi. It's such a great pleasure to have him. This session will also be available on YouTube. I will share the link on this platform. Yeah, and on various groups where we invited our guests. So, Reverend More, let me allow you to proceed.
I was saying then, Baba. So what I'm saying, we who are part of this, I'm using Methodist, the Lutherans have got the World Reform Federation, the Anglicans have got the Anglicans community, the Presbyterian have got theirs. It is important that we from the South, especially South Africa, speaks directly to our churches and say, please put this matter at the center of what you're doing. Now, let me tell you why that is important, Colin. It is important because the person, Sunak, who is in Britain, needs to hear the Archbishop of Canterbury, needs to hear the president of the Methodist Conference, needs to hear the moderator of the Presbyterian community. Those are the people who live in those communities that can speak directly and put pressure on the elite in their society to change where the things are. It is unheard of in the history of the world that the United Nations can't even agree on simply asking for a ceasefire. On asking for a ceasefire, it is unheard of, precisely because there's one country that is standing, that's America, that's Mr. Biden and his administration. At the same time, what you have, therefore, it is Britain who abstains from asking just for a ceasefire. It is because there's no moral pressure that is being put. And I'm saying that's the strategy that we can put from where we are. Secondly, those of us who are in our pews, in our congregations, who work for conglomerates, who work for big business who've got investments and businesses with Israel, to be in those board meetings and say in those board meetings, we cannot have it as usual. If I'm part of this board and this board has a deal with Israel, especially with weapons, I don't know whether you've heard, there was a powerful demonstration in Belgium where workers refuse to take up arms and load arms who are going to Israel. Because when you do that, then you begin to put pressure, because that's where the pressure is going to be. Then the last thing I want to say before I leave you to other questions and other people, there is a movement in the world. In London, they were saying 300 to 500,000 people march 2 weeks ago. There's a big march that is being prepared. There is a big march. There was a big march in Washington. There was a big march in New York. There was a closing down of the station. There's a big march in Paris. So the world, the population of the world is waking up to this matter. And what we can do, it is to connect with those popular movements on the ground and work with them to build momentum globally that begins to put pressure on our leaders and our leaders to America, Western Europe, and Western Europe ultimately to Israel. And when you do that, then you've got momentum. I know I'm not talking about the solutions yet. I'm talking about the strategy that is needed for us to move. If you're going to shift this, simply say one thing, call it moral persuasion is not going to help move Israel. You don't kill children and you see it. I mean, the logic of Israel is scary for me as a South African. Do you know what their logic is on invading Gaza is, Collie? This is their logic, Collie. This is their logic. I want you to imagine this. 85, 86, some comrades go out and they have a bomb somewhere in central Durban. And they go back to Mlazi. And the apartheid police decide to surround Mlazi. And surrounding Mlazi, say to people of Mlazi, you're not going to get food. You're not going to get water. You're not going to get medicine. You're not going to get electricity. They say that, and they say, Jonga, block F, no block G, no block Ndondon. That's where we are going to move, to bomb. We want you to move. And if you don't move very quickly, we are going to bomb. And they come and they bomb those sections of Mlazi. That's the logic. That's the logic that they apply. And I'm saying there needs to be pressure then in the right political spaces. And I think through these measures that I'm suggesting, and people can add others that they can add. The last thing I want to say as an advert, there is a group in South Africa under the chairmanship of Utatu Chigane, which is called Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine. Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine. And that anti-apartheid movement is working hard to convene in the next year a global conference on the anti-apartheid movement for Palestine, so that we have a global response to the things that I'm talking about, inclusive of the things that I just mentioned right now. Let me stop there, Coley. I've taken too much time for people to ask the question that they want to ask.
Yes, thank you so much, Mfundisi. I think that was quite powerful, and you've covered even some of the questions I had planned for you. I want to open up an opportunity for people to comment, to ask questions, to participate in this discussion. I just want to quote Elie Wiesel. He's a Holocaust survivor, a Jewish person. He says, there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. And there's never been such a time where really protest is required against such injustices, whether it's about boycott and disinvestment, a project that is currently going on, and things of such nature. And I'm happy for that you have shared about this anti-apartheid movement for Palestine by Reverend Dr. Chikane Mfundisi. We should be looking forward to that and participate. Let me allow our people available on Zoom to pose questions, to have comments, you know, on the different speakers that have participated today. Whilst people actually, you don't even have to raise your hand. You may just comment, unmute yourself and comment. But I just want to read what I've picked up already. Someone has asked, where does Hamas? This is Zuzile Zungu. If it's Molo, you can note this. Where does Hamas fit here? How different are the current Israelis and the biblical Israelites? Two questions basically. Where does Hamas fit here? And how different are the current Israelites and the biblical Israelites? And another one said, how is Israeli occupation of Palestine different from the ethnic cleansing and genocide committed in the occupation of the land of Canaan by the Israelites, which paved a way for Judeo-Christian Islamic worldviews to exist? Do we consider the occupation of the land of Canaan in the first place as a crime against humanity? I hope you noted some of that. I can always repeat them for you, Reverend Molo, if you want to comment. But before you comment on what I've just read from the inboxes, is there anyone who wants to unmute and have a contribution, whether a question or just a comment? Okay, Reverend Molo, let me allow you to maybe respond. If you want me to repeat any of the question,
no, that's fine, Colin. Okay, I'm going to end with this comment. Where does Hamas feature in this? Hamas has a very interesting history, and today is not the place to debate Hamas's tactics and Hamas's emergence. There are many historians who give certain perspectives around Hamas and how Hamas in many ways has been used by Netanyahu himself. There's documented history that Netanyahu himself invested millions into Hamas because Netanyahu, at his fundamental position, Netanyahu does not want to solve peacefully the issue of the existence of an independent state of Palestine. Netanyahu's view is, at best, you want to divide them and make it impossible for an existence that recognizes the dignity and human power and agency of Palestinians. What, though, is very clear is that Hamas is an important player in the context of the struggle for Palestinian liberation. I have not sat down with any Hamas leader in my life, so I can't speak for them. I have met I've sat down with the current mayor of Ramallah, who incidentally is a Christian. in Ramallah. I've sat with the PLO Minister of Justice. I've sat with the PLO, the Palestinian Authority Minister of Prime Minister, yes, sat with them. What is clear is that Palestinian people are diverse people with diverse views, with diverse representation. And Hamas is part of that equation. There are differences between Hamas and PLO or Fatah. There are differences with Hamas and other non-political actors. There's a third actor called Palestinian for Renewal for Palestine, just forgotten his name. So there are variety, but Hamas is an important partner. Hamas won the last elections in Gaza. And when they won those elections in Gaza, they then had the right to represent the people of Gaza. Unfortunately, the West did not want to accept that as a result. The West decided that it's going to disrupt Hamas, disrupt what Hamas is doing in Gaza, and therefore divide Gaza and West Bank as a way of dividing the Palestinian people. But there's no doubt that Hamas is an important actor. You can debate their strategies at a personal level. I struggle with an idea that you can go and shoot at people who are celebrating, who are in a festival, and you go and shoot them, and you say that's political aims that you're pursuing. I struggle with that. Even in our own struggle, there's what is called the morality of our struggle. And by that, what we meant is that whatever we do in struggle, our struggle should not represent the worst that our enemy is able to do.
Some people are saying the host is not allowing people to unmute. So you guys can speak. But I appeal to you, Podisho, to unmute yourself. You can unmute if you want to participate. All right, I've muted Podisho. Carry on for this.
So I'm saying Hamas, therefore, is an important actor, whatever moral debate you want to have with them. They're an important actor in that struggle, and they need to be taken seriously. They need to be engaged as part of those who want to find solutions. Obviously, the challenge to Hamas might be whether Hamas' view is still the view they hold that Israel can't exist as a state. Those things are things that can be debated and engaged, but nobody should be excluded. And I do want to say that what Israel has done effectively, Israel has killed the hopes of Palestinian people. Coley and everybody here, and Bishop, former President Bishop Zipos will know this. The constant refrain of the Palestinian people was, the world has forgotten us. Please, South Africa, do not forget us. The world has forgotten us. Please, South Africa, do not forget us. And that has been their refrain. And that's the haunting cry that they share with us.
No, thank you for this. To those who can unmute, kindly unmute and say your piece. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how to assist those who are unable to unmute themselves, but just write down your question as brief as possible. If you want to pose a question, if you want to just make a comment, please write a brief comment. I'm sorry for that. I don't really have a clue what is going on, but there's another one here. It says, to what extent are we make these moral judgments as a church because we are on a favorable side of history when the church is reaping the benefits of being rooted upon the historical occupation of the land of Canaan? This is from Usizwe Mapolo.
I mean, I'm sure that is a very fair question to ask. And you ask that question in seeking to say, what foundation do we stand on, and whether we make this judgment in a self-righteous manner? And that's a very fair question to ask. My retort to that is very simple. And I want to go back to what I said. This struggle or this fight is not a religious fight. This is a political. Herzl, the guy who founded the Zionism and everything, he said he's going to Palestine for a place where for a land with no people, so that people without a land can occupy it. I mean, that on its own, you don't even need any religious position to stand on. You need to stand on the view that at the core of that is dehumanization of people. And therefore, the church might look in its mirror and find out if its historical beneficiation from the narrative of the Judeo-Christian narrative of salvation and God's activity, whether that should not make it much more humbler now when it speaks. But being humble does not translate into being quiet when there was so much distraction. I mean, Corey, I just want you, I want you to just imagine this thing. I don't know whether people follow this thing or not. I just want you to imagine this idea that people go into theater in Gaza with no anesthetic. Just think that for a minute. People who are diabetic cannot get their insulin to come into Gaza. Why? Because somewhere, somehow, Hamas has got people who are hiding within these people. Yesterday, they shot an ambulance. And shooting that ambulance, they were asked, why do you shoot that ambulance? They say, no, there was one or two terrorists who were in that ambulance. 3 days ago, they shot a refugee camp. They killed 50 people. And they did not deny that they shot 50 people. Do you know how they justify that? They saw that we shot there because we killed one of the Hamas leaders who was there. Now I want you to see that logic. You kill 50 innocent people in order to get to one person, and you brazenly tell the world you do that. This is not about religion at all.
Thank you, Reverend Molo. Let me continue again and quickly, we're running out of time, and read what Kabelo says. Kabelo says, because he could not unmute, he says, my take is that we appreciate this session and contributions by speakers. We need more of Reverend Molo and connects to make more progressive forces in our own little spaces. Palestine must be freed in our lifetime. We stand side by side with Palestine against Israel barbarism. Thank you so much, Kabelo. Thank you for your patience in not being able to unmute and speak for yourself. Hope next week is going to be better. And this is from Umauchi Pataki. Pardon me, Mauchi, if I'm not pronouncing Mauchi properly. Mauchi Pataki. Mauchi says, is it not part of our brief to put the SA government under pressure to ask the Israeli ambassador to leave until a ceasefire is declared in this war? I'm not sure how abreast are you, Reverend Mora, in terms of our government stance in the last 32 days of this conflict with regards to the ambassador of Israel leaving our country. I know we have withdrawn our envoy to Israel. Do you have a response to that?
No, I mean, let me start by saying, I fully agree that whatever level of pressure we can apply to whoever, let's apply that pressure. And there are many in our society who believes that the ambassador of Israel, even as a powerful symbolic act, that South Africa is abhorred by what is happening in Gaza. And indeed, what is happening in Gaza is genocide, is ethnic cleansing. One of the things that the mayor of Ramallah told us when we were there, The mayor of Ramallah said, the ultimate aim of the Israel, especially the right-wing government of Netanyahu, is to get rid of Palestinians in the Holy Land, so that the land is left to them. That's why they are saying to people, go to the Sinai desert. That's why they say to people, move away, we're going to bomb here, whatever else. We didn't have time here to even to speak what they are doing in the West Bank, where Hamas is not in control. We didn't have time to talk about what they're doing in the West Bank day to day. What they're doing, they're killing people, young people day to day, where Hamas doesn't exist. So every pressure must be put, and there are many people who agree with what Rev Nkosi is suggesting, that we need to put the pressure into a powerful symbolic act South Africa will present to say, we will not have you in our midst. I know South African government is talking about keeping the lines open to engage, but I know of many people who say they want to put that pressure. I want to make, though, a broader call. Our forms of struggle, my study of struggles in the world, our forms of struggle are going to be multi-layered. They are going to reflect power positions. They are going to reflect strength at given moments. They are going to reflect our ability to organize at a given moment. What I think the Palestinian people would need from us is to have a broad movement that is constantly putting pressure on Israel and its allies. Those who can put pressure through arts, let them do so. They might not be able to march in the street. Those who can march in the streets, they need to go out and march in the streets. Young people who can organize wonderful virtual campaigns, let them organize those virtual campaigns. Young people who can record and write stories, let them record and write stories so that they're able to do that. Those who are in the sports field, let them do so. Those who are in parliament, let them do so. Let us have a broad strategic intersect that allows those who can do this to do what they can do, whatever it is that they can do. And it might not go as far as I want them to go, but let them do it. So that in that broad movement, there is pressure at different points that are being put in us. And therefore, those who call for the ejection of the Israel ambassador, let that be done. Let that be. But others are going to do something else which they can do. Two things I want to end on right now is that I know, Koli, there is a bold call that is being made to the World Council of Churches for what is called in a national leaders of faith accompaniment of the people of Gaza. The idea there is trying to say, can the World Council of Churches organize an accompaniment that will be led by prominent religious faith leaders who are going to go there and in Gaza and walk with the people of Gaza? I know there's a call, but I also do know that the UN has lost more than 100 of its staff. I know that there are 30 journalists, more than 30 who have been killed by the state of Israel. So this state of Israel is really doing the same.
You know, while you're there, we have exactly 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
I want to take Urundani Mudamfundis. Guys, continue to try to unmute yourself. Urundani says, examining the numerous wars ongoing across the globe today raises concerns about our safety in South Africa. As Christians, how can we avoid taking sides and instead advocate for peace in the conflict between Israel and Palestine? I think we need to draft our epistle as Paul will do. So Runani is asking, how can we be neutral to then mobilize for peace between Israel and Palestine as Christians?
I'm also because I think
this is Rundani. This is
no. I'm also going to take a season more. I see the question here. Season more was asking. I find it appalling. He said that Rev Molo is praising the Hamas as a vital instrument in the war and have even killed those who were supporting the cause. The senseless killing of innocent people does not justify any cause. Acts of terror and destruction by Israel do not advance any cause. There's no government that is pleasing to God. Both Israel and Palestine should be condemned for crimes against humanity. I'm going to start with Ngobo, and then I'll come back to Urundani about neutrality. Yes, firstly, sir. I mean, I do not know. I didn't in any way praise Hamas. I do not know. Maybe it's the way I spoke. I didn't praise Hamas. I did even indicate I have had serious problems with the attack of people who are in a festival, music festival. The killing of innocent people is abhorrent, and it needs to be rejected and be condemned in the highest possible level. There's no doubt about that in my mind. The point I was making, which is different than condemning simply, the point I was making that Hamas is a reality in the political landscape of Israel, of Palestine. That is the reality. And if we are going to solve the problems, I want to repeat, Hamas won the last election that were held in Gaza. Do I agree with that? That's not up to me to agree with it, but that's the choice that was made. And therefore, all I'm saying, and the question was, where does Hamas fit? The point I'm making, you can condemn the abhorrent act of Hamas, but you can't wish Hamas out of the equation if you want to solve the problem. That's really the point I'm making. I can never, even in our own struggles in the country, we were always very clear that there's morality in struggle. Struggle does not justify killing of innocent people. There's no doubt about that. The issue around neutrality, I will say, what did Tutu say? Tutu used to say, if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and all you choose to do is to be neutral, you are complicit in the perpetual pain of the mouse, if I'm paraphrasing what he said. I fully agree that we should not advocate for war. War doesn't solve any problem. I fully agree that peace is the answer. I fully agree that at the end of chasing Hamas, killing whoever you think is Hamas, at the end of this, there needs to be a sit down. Somebody needs to sit down and say, how do we create an environment where Palestinians and Israelis live in dignity, peace, security, and prosperity in that land? And that can only come when two parties come together. And we therefore can propagate for the need for negotiations and engagement, which is true. But you cannot keep silent when babies are being killed. We have to say negotiations, but please at least ceasefire. Secondly, allow, Colin, let me just say this. There are simple calls that exist right now in the world. Ceasefire, allow the humanitarian aid to come, do whatever you do within international law. Those are simple calls that should be supported by everybody. So I want to say from where I'm seated that neutrality does not mean you do not call out atrocity. Because if you don't call out atrocity, you become complicit in the perpetuation of that injustice. And that is what I think we should be doing through the forums that I suggested. And I really want us to think seriously of those forums that I spoke about earlier on, Colin.
You know, as you speak in Polish, while we draw to a close, I'm reminded of the story of the 1976, when young students were protesting against the use of the Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in schools, and say, what neutral position do you take when the apartheid government of South Africa was killing children, protesting against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction? How neutral can you really be? So Mataboge is saying, while there are many levers that we need to use to apply pressure on Israel, the closest point of reach is the church. How do we ensure that the church speaks with one voice all the way to the World Council of Churches? I saw the Sabelo Ben Monepia responded to Surendani on the neutrality, said other peaceful avenues is in the UN Security Council, like ceasefire, were rejected by allies like USA. Basically, I think like Israel allies like USA. So what option do we have? Prayer alone won't help. So I think as your last parting shot, Fundisi, I'm due for another meeting at this time in the same platform. As your last parting shot, maybe if you want to respond to these comments, I'm sure you can also see them on your side and then have your last word, sir.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I'm going to try to be very quick. Firstly, can I be frank?
Go for it. This is a media talk, not a debate. You go for the jugular.
The wish for the church to speak with one voice might be too elusive at this juncture. The Reverend Pataki was there, and somebody referenced it. Last year, or whatever the time was, we were in Germany, in the WCC. We fought very hard, and that struggle, we didn't win completely, nor did we lose it. As things stand, and I agree with you, that's why I suggested that if the Methodists speak to the Methodist community, the Anglicans speak to the Anglican community, the Catholics the same. If we speak to those communities, there'll be enough momentum so that by the time we go to the WCC, we've got a unified voice. Now, I do not want to go too much into the details of WCC, but let me say this to you. The General Secretary, who is a South African, Professor Jerry Pillay, he's coming to South Africa, and I'm doing a plug now. The SACC is hosting him in 27 November for a public lecture on the work of the WCC. I suspect that he might make a reference to this. But in 2016, he went to Israel and declared Israel an apartheid state. When he was elected at the WCC, he was called an anti-Semite, and there was pressure put on the WCC to reject or to withdraw his election as General Secretary. That's how powerful the Israel lobby is. So we must be ready for a fight. We must be ready to engage as much as we can. And if we can make the church to speak with one voice, I will be very happy myself. But here in South Africa, we need, in my concluding, we need to connect with other sectors. The Muslim community is important because the majority of Palestinians are Muslim. So we need to connect with them. There are Jews who are very, very, very committed to freedom. We need to connect with them because they are the voice that needs to be heard. And if we work together to create this broad movement that I think we can create, there's enough pressure for change. It is true that this Palestinian struggle has been going on for too long, and the church cannot be quiet. What I will do, Paulie, is to share with you one or two documents, and I'm going to share with you, there's a wonderful 20-minute video of the Palestinian Christians who are speaking for themselves and giving their history. I will share that with you, and if you're able to share with whoever you can share that with, I will. You can do that. For now, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Molo, and to Reverend Nkosi in his absentia. And thank you everyone who was able to join us this evening. I will request that whoever is able to open their videos, let's open our videos and give each other blessings of benediction. This gathering will be downloaded and be put on YouTube in a page called The Dialogue, a mediated discussion. our YouTube page called The Dialogue, a mediated discussion. Be able to find all our sessions there. I will share to the different groups that are part of this. If you can open your videos and let's give each other, guys, a benediction in a language of your heart. Some are still don't have their videos on. Open your videos and let's share benediction. But some
I can see you guys. Yeah.
Nice to see you, Reverend Siwa. Reverend Batak. Thank you so much. And everyone who's able to join us. If we can have a benediction. Kwanga umusa wenkosi udlala umoya egcwele udlala Baba udlala umoya egcwele ngaphakathi sonke amen. Guys, continue to join this place. We having Reverend Roxanne Jordan coming up. We have Reverend Dr. Alan Pusak coming up in some of the sessions. So we have some interesting guests coming through to help us unpack this topic. You will be kept abreast. Continue to spread the word, guys, as we build for solidarity and for mobilizations against us at the apartheid state of Israel and the atrocities against the people of Palestine. I thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Thank you.